Picture this. Two ancient humans are sitting at the edge of a camp somewhere in what will eventually become the Middle East, roughly 12,000 years ago. Between them, a small fire. Around the camp perimeter, the familiar sounds of a settlement that has been in place long enough to accumulate the particular ecosystem that permanent human habitation creates. Food scraps, stored grain, the smell of cooked meat, all of it broadcasting a very specific set of signals into the surrounding darkness that certain animals find extremely interesting. From one direction, padding into the firelight with the particular quality of movement that belongs to an animal that has decided after careful personal deliberation that the benefits of being here outweigh the risks. A dog. Medium-sized, somewhere between the lean wolf ancestry it carries in its DNA and the domesticated animal it is in the process of becoming. It approaches with its body language doing everything it can to communicate non-threat, low status, high interest in whatever food might be available. One of the humans tosses it a piece of bone. The dog catches it, retreats slightly, eats with focused efficiency, and then, rather than leaving, lies down at the edge of the firelight. It is staying. It has decided the company is worth it. From another direction, moving along the base of the camp's storage structure with the specific quality of attention that belongs to an animal pursuing something small and moving. A wildcat. Compact, independent, operating entirely on its own agenda, which at this moment involves the mice that have established themselves in the grain storage with the same opportunistic logic that brought the wildcat to this place in the first instance. The cat catches something, eats it with the brisk efficiency of an animal that views dining as a practical matter rather than a social occasion. It is aware of the humans. It is not concerned by them. It is also not particularly interested in them. It will leave when it has finished what it came to do. Both animals have, in their different ways, made themselves part of this human settlement. Both will, across the following centuries and millennia, become something that did not previously exist. Domestic animals with ongoing, multi-generational relationships with the human species. But the nature of how they arrived, what they offered, what ancient humans got from each relationship, and what the emotional texture of those relationships actually was, these are where the dog and cat stories diverge completely, and where the question of which ancient humans liked more becomes considerably more complicated and considerably more interesting than a simple preference poll would suggest. So here's the full examination. What the archaeological, genetic, and anthropological evidence actually tells us about how ancient humans related to dogs versus cats, what each relationship was built on, what it felt like from the human side, and whether the oldest question in the internet's history has an answer that reaches back tens of thousands of years into the deep past. Start with the dogs, because the dog relationship is older, and because the depth of that relationship, how far back it goes, how completely it was integrated into ancient human life, is the foundation against which everything else has to be measured. The domestication of dogs from wolves began somewhere between 15,000 and 40,000 years ago, depending on which genetic analysis and which archaeological evidence you weight most heavily. The range is wide because the process was not a single event in a single place. It was a gradual, distributed transition in multiple populations across a broad geographic range, driven by the same basic dynamic repeated in different contexts. Wolves that tolerated human proximity better than others got access to food scraps and fire warmth. Those individuals reproduced more. Their slightly more tolerant offspring reproduced more again. The population of wolves associating with human groups slowly shifted toward greater human tolerance, and eventually toward active preference for human proximity, across generations of accumulated selection pressure. This process happened, and it happened during the period when ancient humans were still fully mobile hunter-gatherer groups, before agriculture, before permanent settlement, before the entire infrastructure of sedentary civilization that most people associate with the beginnings of animal domestication. Dogs were not a product of agricultural society. They were a product of the ancient hunter-gatherer lifestyle. And this timing is profoundly significant for understanding what the dog-human relationship actually was in its ancient form. Ancient hunter-gatherer groups and their proto-dogs were not in the relationship that a modern person has with a pet dog. They were in something closer to a functional partnership between two social species operating in the same ecological niche, each gaining something the other provided. The dog gained access to reliable food, fire warmth, and the protection that human group membership conferred. The ancient humans gained something that, when you think carefully about what mobile hunter-gatherer life actually required, was enormously valuable. An animal that could extend the group's sensory range in ways that human senses alone could not achieve. Dogs smell things humans cannot smell, at distances humans cannot detect, in directions humans are not looking. Dogs hear things humans cannot hear, at frequencies and intensities beyond human auditory range. A dog in camp at night that alerts to something approaching the perimeter is a detection system that the group's own biology cannot replicate. In a world where approaching predators, rival groups, or large dangerous animals could arrive with limited warning, having an animal that provided earlier and more reliable detection of approaching threats was not a convenience. It was a survival advantage with direct, immediate, measurable value. The hunting partnership dimension adds another functional layer. Dogs tracking prey by scent in environments where human visual tracking loses the trail, dogs flushing prey from cover that human hunters could not effectively search, dogs pursuing wounded animals that would otherwise escape. All of these represent capabilities that extended the ancient human group's hunting effectiveness in ways that translated directly into caloric return. The evidence for ancient human-dog cooperative hunting comes from multiple directions. The geographic distribution of early dog domestication aligns with hunting cultures. The early morphological development of dogs shows selection for traits associated with hunting assistance. And the ethnographic record of contemporary hunter-gatherer groups that maintain dog relationships documents the hunting partnership function as central to how those groups understand the value of their dogs. But here is the dimension that archaeological evidence has revealed most poignantly, and that speaks most directly to the emotional rather than functional character of the ancient human-dog relationship. Ancient humans buried their dogs. Not casually. With care, with deliberateness, sometimes with grave goods, sometimes in proximity to or together with human burials, in ways that indicate the dogs were being treated as beings whose death warranted the kind of structured response that was otherwise reserved for group members. Ancient burial sites across multiple continents and multiple time periods show dog burials that indicate emotional investment rather than merely practical disposal. A dog buried with a human, positioned together in the same grave, sometimes with the human's hand resting on the dog, is not a discard. It is an expression of relationship that the people doing the burying considered important enough to mark through the effort and ritual of burial. The ancient humans who buried their dogs this way were communicating something about how they understood the relationship, and what they were communicating looks, across 12,000 years of cultural distance, recognizable. They loved their dogs, not in the abstract sense of valuing a useful tool, but in the specific sense of caring about the particular animal, mourning its death, and wanting to mark that death in a way that acknowledged the relationship. The archaeological record of ancient dog burials is extensive enough, distributed enough across time and geography, and careful enough in its execution to support this conclusion without requiring a romantic reading of the evidence. Now bring in the cats, because the cat story is different from the beginning. Different in its timeline, different in its mechanism, and different in what it reveals about what ancient humans were actually getting from and giving to their feline associates. Cat domestication began approximately 10,000 years ago in the Near East in direct association with the agricultural revolution. The timing is not coincidental. The shift to agricultural settlement created grain storage, and grain storage created dense mouse and rat populations, and dense mouse and rat populations created a food resource that Near Eastern wildcats, Felis silvestris libica, the specific wildcat subspecies from which all domestic cats descend, were perfectly positioned to exploit. The cats came to the settlements because the settlements had mice. The ancient humans kept the cats because the cats had mice. By the way, if you want to go even deeper into the secret lives of ancient humans, I just launched a full course called The Secret Lives of Ancient Humans. 10 modules, 3+ hours of content covering everything we never talk about on YouTube. What they feared, how they communicated, what hunted them, and much more. Plus an exclusive PDF guide included. Link in the description. See you inside. This is, as origin stories go, considerably more transactional than the dog story. There was no hunting partnership. There was no perimeter alert system. There was no ancient wildcat equivalent of the wolf gradually moving into the social circle of the group through tolerance and mutual benefit across multiple behavioral domains. There was grain, mice, cats that ate mice, and ancient farmers who found this arrangement useful and made no effort to discourage it. The implications of this different origin run through everything that follows. Dog domestication was driven by selection for behavioral traits, reduced fear, reduced aggression, increased social tolerance, increased attentiveness to human social signals that were actively advantageous in the hunting partnership context, and that reshaped the dog's social cognition at a neurological level. Cat domestication was driven primarily by cats being allowed to remain near human settlements because they were performing a pest control service without the same intensity of selection for human-directed social traits. The result is what everyone who has ever owned both a dog and a cat already knows at an intuitive level. Dogs have been neurologically rewired for human social connection in ways that cats have not. Dogs track human eye gaze, follow pointing gestures, seek human attention when confronted with problems, and show oxytocin release in response to human eye contact in patterns that parallel the neurochemistry of human parent-infant bonding. Cats show these behaviors at dramatically lower intensity, with dramatically more individual variation, and with a general orientation toward human interaction that is better described as conditional tolerance than as the social imperative that characterizes dog-human attachment. But here is where the simple "dogs are more domesticated, therefore more loved" conclusion oversimplifies what the ancient human experience of these two relationships actually was. Because the cat, despite its more transactional origin and its less neurology-rewired social profile, was valued by ancient humans in ways that extended well beyond pest control. And the evidence for this is both archaeological and cultural, and it is spread across a remarkable geographic and temporal range. Ancient Egyptian civilization produced the most extensively documented early human-cat relationship. And while Egypt is a post-ancient human civilization in the strict timeline sense, its relationship with cats reflects attitudes that had been developing across the preceding millennia of association between Near Eastern humans and their feline associates. The elevation of cats in Egyptian culture, from the practical pest controllers of early agricultural settlements to the sacred animals associated with the goddess Bastet, depicted in art, mummified in enormous numbers, protected by law against killing, represents a cultural elaboration of the cat relationship that built across thousands of years and that reflects something about how humans relate to cats that goes beyond the utilitarian. Cats are fascinating. This is not a trivial observation, it is a specific cognitive and aesthetic response that has been documented across cultures and time periods, and that appears to be fairly consistent in the human population. The specific quality of cat movement, the precision, the economy of effort, the aesthetic elegance of a cat walking or jumping or hunting, produces in human observers a response that is not purely utilitarian appreciation. People watch cats, not just because cats are useful to watch, but because watching cats is intrinsically engaging in ways that the human visual and attention systems respond to with something approaching aesthetic pleasure. Ancient humans living in proximity to cats were exposed to this response regularly, and the cultural evidence suggests they were responding to it in ways that went beyond the practical. Cat representations in ancient art appear across multiple cultures and contexts that suggest the cat was regarded as an object of aesthetic interest and even admiration, rather than purely as a functional animal. The specific beauty of cats, the independence, the elegance, the quality of contained self-possession that makes cats look like they are always operating on an agenda of their own that the humans around them are only partially aware of, produced a human response that was emotionally engaged even when it was not the social warmth that characterizes the dog relationship. The question of which ancient humans liked more, dogs or cats, therefore requires separating two different things that are both being called liking. The ancient human relationship with dogs was deeper, older, more neurologically reciprocal, more socially intimate, and more emotionally symmetrical. Dogs sought human connection in ways that ancient humans could recognize, respond to, and reciprocate in the same social language. The attachment between ancient humans and their dogs was mutual in a way that the ancient human-cat relationship was not, because the dog's social neurology was oriented toward the human relationship in a way the cat's was not. But the ancient human relationship with cats contained something that the dog relationship did not, in quite the same form: a response to an animal that was definitively its own thing, that did not need the human relationship and was not shaped by it in the same fundamental way, and that was beautiful and capable and interesting on its own terms rather than in relation to what the human needed from it. The cat was not dependent on ancient humans for its social world in the way the dog was. It was there because the arrangement suited it, and it could leave if it stopped suiting it, and this quality of voluntary association, of a relationship maintained by mutual benefit rather than by the dog's social imperative to be with humans, produced a different emotional texture in the human experience of it. Ancient humans who watched a cat hunt, who observed the precision and speed and efficiency of a cat pursuing a mouse, who had a cat choose to sit near them without being sought out, were experiencing something that the dog relationship, for all its warmth and depth, did not provide in the same form. They were experiencing the presence of an animal that was fully itself, fully capable, and not particularly interested in their approval. There is archaeological evidence of cats being kept in ways that go beyond functional pest control from relatively early in the domestic cat timeline. A cat burial at a Neolithic site in Cyprus, dating to approximately 9,500 years ago, was found buried alongside a human in a way that indicates the animal was deliberately interred rather than simply discarded. Cyprus had no native wild cat population, which means the cat was transported to the island by humans, an act that required intention and effort, and that suggests the cat being transported was valued for reasons that extended beyond its usefulness in an environment where it presumably could not have been performing its standard grain storage pest control function during an ocean crossing. The reasonable inference is that this cat was someone's companion animal in some meaningful sense, transported because the person traveling wanted the cat along, buried when it died because the person burying it considered the relationship worth marking. This is not identical to the depth of relationship documented in ancient dog burials, which are more numerous, more consistently present across more cultures and time periods, and more elaborate in their expression of grief and attachment. But it is not nothing. What this adds up to is a picture of ancient human relationships with these two species that were different from each other in ways that reflect the different natures of the animals involved, rather than simply different degrees of the same relationship. Ancient humans liked dogs in the way you like someone who loves you back, who has reorganized their entire social world around their relationship with you, who is unhappy when you are absent, and demonstrably happy when you return. That is a specific kind of relationship, with a specific emotional texture that the dog's social neurobiology made possible, and that ancient humans responded to with the same warmth that humans show toward that kind of relationship in any context. Ancient humans liked cats in the way you like someone who is extraordinary at what they do, who is interesting to be around, who occasionally chooses your company and makes that choice feel like something because it was not guaranteed, and who handles their own affairs with a self-possession that you find aesthetically impressive even when it involves pointed indifference to your preferences. That is also a specific kind of relationship with a specific emotional texture, and it is one that has been consistent across the entire span of human-cat association. The internet's cat versus dog debate, which team you are on, which animal you prefer, which relationship you value more, is a very modern framing of something that has been true for a very long time. These two animals offer fundamentally different kinds of companionship, and different humans at different points in their lives, and in different circumstances find different things in that offer. Ancient humans understood this intuitively without needing to frame it as a preference debate. They kept dogs because dogs were partners, in hunting, in protection, in the social intimacy of shared daily life. And the partnership was deep enough and emotionally real enough that they buried their dogs with the same care they gave their human dead. They kept cats because cats were useful, and also because cats were fascinating, and also because occasionally a cat chose to sit with you at the fire. And that small voluntary choice produced a response in the human nervous system that was recognizable and warm, even if it was not the profound mutual attachment that the dog relationship involved. So, which did ancient humans like more? The honest answer, supported by the evidence, is dogs. In the sense of deeper attachment, longer relationship, greater emotional investment, more reciprocal social bonding, and more consistent evidence of grief at loss across more cultures across more time. The dog relationship won that comparison from the beginning and has never really been challenged. But the ancient humans who watched their cats hunt at dusk, who felt a cat settle near the fire without being invited, who noticed the particular quality of attention a cat brings to everything it does, those ancient humans were not indifferent to what they were watching. They were engaged by it, charmed by it, in some cases. And the fact that this response has been consistent across 12,000 years of human-cat association, despite the cat's relative indifference to human social approval, suggests that whatever the cat offers the human nervous system, it offers it reliably and across cultural contexts wide enough to confirm that the response is not accidental. Ancient humans liked dogs more. Ancient humans also could not stop watching the cats. Both of those things were true at the same time, and they have been true ever since.